Hey everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of ranking every commander I've ever built around. If you missed the first 2 parts, they should be on the channel, so go ahead and check those out if you want some background on why I'm doing this and my ranking criteria for the tiers. These are all subjective and based off of my own experience with these legendary creatures and planeswalkers, so do with that as you wish. This is just a fun rehash and way to look back for me over my time with Magic and see what lessons I've taken away and maybe rediscover some legends that I miss and want to build around again, as we might see today. So with that, let's get started on part 3. Oh, and if you watched the first 2 parts, you might notice that we went back in the alphabet a little bit from where we left off in part 2. Between episodes, I remembered I hadn't accounted for some of the commanders I've built around on Magic Online, so digital decks that I've played but haven't built in paper, but I figured those counted because that's another way to enjoy Commander. So we're going back to D for a little bit, but we'll catch up eventually. So starting with Daxos. Daxos, it's been a while since I played with him. He might be in a better spot today. When I tried building him a few years ago, he was just very clunky. I could never draw the pieces I wanted to. I thought Orzhov Enchantment was kind of a cool spin on the archetype, kind of get away from Selesnya and dive into some of the constellation effects in white and black. He's very good in the end game, a good mana sink, and can build you a beefy board if it's all going well. I don't think he's a strategy I would revisit today anytime soon, and my experiences with him has always been mid to forgettable. I don't think he's bad. Just didn't leave much of a impression on me. So we'll just put him in C, kind of in the middle. Doran, however, I built him. I've only built him digitally, but I kind of want to revisit him and build him in paper. Treefolk have gotten a lot of new cards and support, or even the Toughness Matters archetype between Lord of the Rings had some good Treefolk, and you can go life gain, you can go beat down, you can go mill and reanimator. There's just some interesting things, and I just have a lot of random Abzan staple-y stuff in my collection already, so it wouldn't be too hard to put him together. Yeah, he's pretty interesting. I built him as straightforward Treefolk online, which was fine. There was some vanilla creatures, like I think it's that 2/10 4-drop white tree, which you kind of run that for the novelty. I think he's been kind of outpaced by Arcades, the Bant Elder Dragon, who cares about creatures with Defender and deals combat damage equal to the toughness rather than its power. I think people kind of gravitate toward that because it has card advantage built in, but I think Doran's still a cool commander. Comes down early. There's enough redundancy in those colors now for his effect, so if he's shut down several times, you're not left with a bunch of terrible low power, high toughness creatures like Assault Formation and I'm forgetting the names of the other ones, but there's that. When I was looking through Scryfall today, there was at least 4 or 5 that do the Doran effect, so I like redundancy. It's fun. Yeah, so I was kind of brewing around today. I was kind of liking the cards I saw, kind of focusing in on a list, and he might very well happen very soon. So I think I'm going to put him in A. Heliod, I have built both in paper and online. both weren't very good. Not necessarily because Heliod's a bad card, it's just because I wasn't willing to buy the cards to make the deck good, and I was just trying to do some janky white commander deck of some sort. I like him giving everything vigilance. I think vigilance is a very underrated keyword in Commander. People tend to turtle up in games, and especially if everyone has loaded boards, no one really wants to start swinging because that leaves themselves open to all the other players. You might knock someone out, but then someone else is going to come in and wipe you out. So Vigilance kind of gets rid of that problem. It lets you be aggressive, but also maintain blockers. He's a good mana sink, gives you an outlet late game when you're not doing much. And the tokens are enchantments, which is, I think, a missed feature on him, in that it can trigger your constellation effects, any enchantment synergies. I've seen some funny... this was probably back in the day before White had better ways to draw cards, but there was some just funny combos with like Skybind and other janky ways to like accumulate card advantage. Mono White isn't always my jam. I've already talked about Danitha, who kind of led to an interesting direction. But as far as like straightforward, just mono white aggro or even mono white enchantments, it's probably not something I'm super interested in right now. And I don't recall having very memorable or fun gameplay experiences while playing with Heliod, so I'll probably put him at D. I think he's good in the 99 like the other Theros gods. He doesn't go away very easily, and yeah, vigilance should be played more, I think. Ooh, Kadena. So I already talked about, I think part 1, I talked about my Animar deck, which was morph themed. When Kadena came out, that Animar quickly turned into Kadena. I was very excited to see a deck that cared about morphs. I mean, she doesn't say morph creature specifically, but it's very clearly at the time focused and made for morph creatures, to capitalize off of morph creatures. And she was so much fun. The Sultai colors give you a lot of that interaction and the card draw to keep up with the rest of the table. Morphs are really good in that they're they're creatures that act as spells, more or less, like instant speed spells. The discount's really nice. You can just play a free creature each turn, or during your opponent's turns even too, if you can get a flash enabler out of some sort. It replaces itself when it enters the battlefield. If you have a untapped land effect like a Seedborn Muse or a Wilderness Reclamation, that gives you mana to flip your morph creatures, and then you can bounce those creatures. You can flip them back face down with other effects. Just rinse and repeat. It's very good at grinding out games. The problem I had with the deck is probably like having defining finishers for it. Like I would usually win with the deck. It kind of played out as running your opponents out of answers. And morph flip effects are very hard to get around because they technically don't use the stack. I might not be representing that rule correctly, but it can get around effects like split second, which is fun. You don't run into split second spells every game necessarily, but it is a fun feature nonetheless. And yeah, so after a while, I think the group had enough of the morphs, and so I took the deck apart. But lately, I've been really missing that kind of gameplay experience. And with the last several sets you have Disguise from Murders at Karlov Manor. You have Manifest Dread, which is a new mechanic in Duskmourn, which is upgraded Manifest. All those synergize wonderfully with Kadena because they all count as face-down creatures and like crazy effects like Eudora and stuff, which are just made for Kadena. So there's a lot of new tech and tools that are really exciting, and I really want to see in a Kadena shell. So I've been brewing around Kadena lately, and she's a very strong candidate to make it back to my paper collection. And as an aside, I think she's a good pick for those who want to be interacting with the table more meaningfully, but you're also developing your board state, so you're not just like holding a grip full of counter spells or destroy spells, but you're actually like having creatures that come down now. And a lot of the new Morph and Manifest and Disguise support have some good... They even had a Naya Morph Precon recently that added some new tools to buff those utility morph creatures into like actual threats. So you can actually start threatening people with your morph creatures. It doesn't necessarily have to be a finisher each time, which is nice. So Kadena, I would definitely put in S. Morphs they didn't originally come out in cons. I might have said that when I talked about Animar. I know I'm wrong. Morphs have been around for a long time, from way earlier sets in Magic, but they were a main mechanic in the Tarkir block, and that was the first block I was really starting to get into Magic, so it just has really good memories for me. And I've always thought the mechanic was cool. So Kadena kind of checks off all those boxes. I like the Sultai colors. Kind of gives you everything you need. And yeah, I think she'll make an appearance in my play group very, very soon. So S she goes. Kalemne. Have I played all the experience commanders? I think I have. She's another one from the 2015 precons with Marin and Azuri and Daxos, who we just talked to. She was kind of the odd one of the bunch. Just they kind of had a Boros, or they had a giant sub theme in the deck, and Boros isn't known for its mana acceleration, especially at that time. So the deck was really clunky. It had a really wacky curve. And she didn't like super synergize with what the rest of the deck was doing. She was just a payoff for casting big spells. But in reality, you're only casting one spell a turn with convert mana cost 5 or greater. Yeah, just kind of a muddled thing. I don't think she's not a mistake, but I'm not interested in playing with her. She was just... I feel like they didn't know what to do with the Boros one over there. And if you had a better experience with her, or like brewed a cool thing around her, like please let me know. That'd be cool. Kalitas. Oh, Kalitas. When did I get him? Probably shortly after Oath of the Gatewatch came out. What a house of a card. I think, I know he's a staple in Constructed for a long time, and yeah, he just blends like vampires and zombies and his sack outlet, and he stops dying triggers from your opponents, and he's graveyard hate and all sorts of good stuff. He builds your board. He's just very aesthetically cool. Does a lot of neat stuff. I've built multiple variations around him. He's not a very nice commander. Because you're running a lot of Fleshbag Marauder effects, Grave Pact effects, and just keeping your opponent's board stripped down. This, I don't regret playing him. It's probably not a deck I'm going to run out in the near future. I know I'm kind of looking for my next mono black list. It's probably not the gameplay experience I'm quite looking for, and I've become more aware of I've become more aware of like what kind of gameplay experience I want my opponents to go through as well. I want people to get a chance to play and enjoy, and not just like watch all their creatures die, and as I build an army of zombies to sacrifice or do stuff with. But Kalitas, I'll put in B. He's very good. I enjoyed my time with him, but I recognize he probably doesn't lead to very fun games for the rest of my opponents. Moving on to Kami of the Crescent Moon. I built this as a joke deck for, I think it was a game night, and every card in the deck had the text draw a card on it, or something to do with draw. And yeah, I just basically went through my collection and threw anything in there that said draw a card, and that could be draw a card for you, draw a card for your opponent. It had everything, and I don't know if it had much of a win con. It probably had Psychosis Crawler. It had stuff like Toothy. It had Consecrated Sphinx. It had good cards in it, but it was definitely a joke deck. Yeah, I don't recall if my friend who pulled this to play it, if he won, but we definitely all drew a lot of cards that game. And I don't desire to play Kami the Crescent Moon again. But it was funny, that one game with him. Ooh, Kami's. I really liked New Capenna. It kind of feels like a blip on the radar with all the sets we get today and how fast sets come out. We barely get time to process one set that came out before we're on to the next one. But Kami's kind of had my eye. This is where she kind of picked up the slack. So I remember talking about Alayla from part 1, the fairy commander, who was kind of my aggro Esper list for a while. That list kind of morphed into Kami's. I bought the Precon. I thought the Connive mechanic was really cool, and Kami's giving something unblockable, and her wording is very confusing, but it makes a little more sense once you actually play with it. So I've had a lot of reps with the deck. It's very good. I've had a ton of fun games with it. Yeah, it just runs a lot of the Esper cards that you'll love to see. And I don't think this list is up to date, but just to give you an idea, it's just, yeah, Esper fun. I got my Dragon Lord Ojutai. You can do silly stuff like with Archfiend of Ifnir. I think backup is really good in this deck. Archpriest of Shadows is awesome. You get to play like the disturbed creatures. They're great connive targets. You throw them in the graveyard, you disturb them later, enchant something else. Yeah, just a ton of fun beatdown strategies, and I like it because it's outside of green and red. It's just a fun twist on the colors for a trio of colors that is traditionally more controlling, hang back. This one likes to get in there and beat face. So, yeah, really like Kami's. I don't have any plans of taking her apart anytime soon. Always on the lookout for new tech for her. She's definitely an S. Really, really like Kami's. Kangee. OG Kangee. I know there's a new and improved version out there, but this was the one I first started with. I was really trying to make birds work. I was looking just for a off the beaten path creature type to build around, and I thought birds kind of seemed fun. Kangee looked like a good creature for late game. Just dump a bunch of mana in it, and it's a big anthem. It's rough to even get to a buff of 1. You have to pay the 4 just to cast her, and then 2 an X. So you're looking at 7 mana just to get a 2/2 that buffs your other birds by 1, because I think they've errated the text to not count Kangee herself with the buff, which is, couldn't even offer her that, which is funny. Other bird creatures. Yeah, I mean, that's just insult to injury. But anyway, the deck wasn't very good. It ran a bunch of really suboptimal birds, and I think birds have gotten much better as of late. Just seeing if I could. I don't remember. Some of the birds had funny like combat tricks on them, and most have flying, so the evasion is nice. But there's much better support. Like I said, the new Kangee is very good, and probably be who I would consider building around. No. There's that Bloombarrow bird. Oh yeah, geez, the Bloombarrow bird. Yeah, definitely would build around that legend if I decide to go the bird route again. Seems very good. I watched someone on the Spike Feeders wreck face with that deck. But Kangee, I don't even think Kangee goes in modern bird decks. Or if I in the 99 of a bird deck, I think there's just better anthems and stuff. But nostalgic factor, she's cool. But as for my time with Kangee, I'd probably put her at a D. Karametra was an early deck for me. Originally saw her, one of my buddies, he ran a Karametra list, and he would let me borrow it from time to time. And I always had really good gameplay experiences with it. Yeah, you just cast. It's a very creature-heavy list, and you just cast a lot of creatures and ramp every time you cast a creature, and just keep playing Selesnya bombs. And yeah, I think she's a lot of fun for newer players, and she's hard to get rid of, as with all the other Theros gods. So I'd still recommend her today. I think she's a great way to guarantee your land drops, and combos aside, I think she just gets you up to your upper curve very quickly if you have any sort of engine online. And yeah, I think she's still fun. So I'd put her in B. I usually don't play just ramp strategies nowadays, but I did have a lot of good memories with her for sure, and I would still recommend her. Kardur, Doomscourge. Kardur is like super goad. So when I first saw him, I had to build around him. I loved the goad mechanic, and he was very good. His wording in particular catches a lot of people by surprise, because the way he works is it's not just when he enters that he goads, quote unquote, the creatures that are currently on the battlefield. It's also any other creatures that enter your opponent's battlefields that next turn cycle. So if they have an haste enabler, or you have a creature that gives everything haste, they have to attack with those creatures if they played it their pre-combat main phase. And yeah, and the whole goal of the deck is set up Kardur, find ways to get him killed, bring him back so he can keep perpetually goading everything. I think I ran some of the haunted creatures in this deck, like the haunted dragon, haunted horror, and just giving out creatures for my opponents to swing with. I Kardur was really good. I don't think it was super fun for my opponents. I think the artwork is super sweet. Yeah, really definitely goes in Goad decks. He's in my Baloth deck now with Baloth and Haunted One. Or not Haunted One, Criminal Past. No, I liked Kardur. I get excited every time I draw him, so and I was excited to play him, but I won't be bringing this iteration of Goad back anytime soon. I don't think so. He's a B for me. Kaseto. Kaseto was the backup commander for Izuri, the Simic Izuri, who cared about experience counters and creatures with power 2 or less entering. Yeah, I kind of forgot that Precon had a snake theme to go with Kaseto. Kaseto is very fun. I have built Kaseto once or twice. When I built this deck, I didn't even focus on snakes, I don't think. It's just the ability says target creature, and you get the +2 if it happens to be a snake, but doesn't need to be. Yeah, just load up your deck with creatures that care about making contact, and it's pretty good. And can't be blocked, gets real quick when you're playing Simic, which you can just play, ramp out these giant monsters. So I had a good time with Kaseto. It's been a while since I've played with this particular deck, but I remember having good memories. If I had the need, if I really felt the need to build a Simic deck, this is probably more of the direction I would take. Just because it kind of presents a game plan of like, here's what we're moving to, instead of just dirtling in value as Simic is notorious to do. I would rather the game end sooner versus later than have my opponents watch me take a 10-minute turn. So I'd rather do something with all the ramping I'm doing, play something big, give it unblockable, and smack someone, and move toward progressing the game along. Kaseto, I would put Kaseto at A. I think it does cool stuff you can do. First came out in Mirrodin, I believe, and was a backup legend for Nahiri in the 2014 precons. Kemba, fairly forgettable, at least for me. It kind of encourages Voltron and builds you a board at the same time, so kind of goes wide, goes tall. Yeah, I built her. I don't remember much about her. I don't think I kept her around for much. My one of my friends is playing Kemba right now, built a Kemba deck out of his collection. It does some cool stuff. I think he has the benefit of having access to some newer white support cards that weren't around when I first built Kemba. So I think the deck performs a little bit better. I don't even know if I'd put Kemba in an equipment list, to be honest. I'd probably put her at D. If I was gonna play mono white, I don't think I would go that direction. Keranos. I just randomly have a Keranos in my collection, and I recall trying to build around him. I think I did a spells only list, like sorceries and instants, just to experiment, and I think it went terribly. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend all instants or all sorceries. There might be commanders that support that better, but I don't think Keranos is the way. It was in a different time. It was earlier when I was just trying wild brews. Yeah, probably F tier for Keranos. I don't even think I'd run him in the 99. I might have said that already, so apologies if I did. Kethis. Man, we're hitting some good ones today. I built Kethis as a budget list back when he first came out, and he was very good. I kind of had a self-mill package. It wasn't all critical mass. It had a lot of legendary stuff, but it also had generic ramp support and the stuff that you need to make your deck tick. The goal of the deck was to find and play Urza's Ruinous Blast and Kamal's Vow. No, not Kamal's Vow. Oh yeah, Druidic Vow. I was right. Yeah, basically finding this and just looping it 2 or 3 times. That usually won you the game, as you can imagine. Very fun. It was very grindy, as Abzan's pretty good at. Had a lot of good answers, good removal. It wasn't running crazy busted cards, as I recall. At least the budget list wasn't. But it had like just some funny moments of, I remember having like the original The Wanderer out, which prevents all non-combat damage to you and your creatures. And someone fired off a Blasphemous Act. Yeah, this one. Non-combat damage to you and other permanents. Yeah, someone fired off a Blasphemous Act, and my board was completely fine, and everyone kind of forgot about that text. And yeah, just kind of had some fun tech in the deck. And I upgraded it slowly. Got like an Achroma's Memorial in there, so you flip that off of Kamal's Druidic Vow, and it gives your board all these keywords and haste, and you can attack that same turn and hopefully win. Yeah, he's discount. He's recursion. It just says legendary cards, doesn't have to be creatures. There's been a lot more legendary matter support lately. Yeah, I kind of miss this deck. I've been brewing around, seeing what else is out there for him, or what new tools he has. He's a very strong contender for getting rebuilt soon. So he definitely goes in A. A lot of cool stuff he enables. Kiki-Jiki, kind of a classic boogeyman of the format. I don't really see him anywhere now in the 99 or at the face of. I feel if you're running in the face of, everyone just looks at you. I ran him just to try like making some, making copies of big dumb things. This was early on when I first started getting into Magic. And of course I had to run Zealous Conscripts. I didn't even have dedicated ways to find Zealous Conscripts, but the game I played with him, I drew Zealous Conscripts, and so played it, and it just wasn't a fun experience for anyone. Nowadays, I think there's just better ways to, or better generals to lead this type of deck. Definitely less powerful, but she's really cool. I don't know how to spell this guy. He's newer. Yeah, this guy. March of the Machine, some crazy splashy effects. This last one just ends games, which for 9 mana I would hope it would. But he's really cool. He's probably the new optimal leader for this type of style. So yeah, my experience with Kiki-Jiki was less than optimal, I would say, and would not recommend playing him in the command zone. Just basic. Krenko, another early commander for me. Definitely a classic. I had an online deck of him at one point, but I still have it built. I don't play it really at all. Straightforward. You want to play goblins? He's still the Goblin King. He's probably... people just know they gotta kill Krenko like when he comes down. Otherwise, you take over the game. I played mine as pretty all in on the Krenko plan. It was either get a couple activations of Krenko, or watch him die and do nothing. But it ran some fun cards like Click Slither and some older weird goblin support cards that you don't necessarily see run around. I haven't really seen a goblin deck lately. I think there's some cool Rakdos builds and nowadays, but for mono red goblins, I don't really feel the call. Goblins do have some of the best flavor text in Magic, I will say, but Krenko, I don't really miss. I don't regret my time with him, so that moves him out of an F, but I don't really have a desire to play again. It's a good classic creature type to introduce to new players because it's very straightforward, like play Goblin, which makes more goblins or supports other goblins. You know, that's why you see elves and goblins paired together so often because they're pretty straightforward in what they do. But it can be fun to be aggressive. Kruphix. I don't even remember a lot about the list when I built Kruphix. I think I was just playing big Simic bombs. I don't even think it was too oppressive. Hopefully not. Yeah, it just kind of represents the things I don't like about Simic. Encourage you to like mass up these big hand sizes, big mana, hard to get rid of stuff. Yeah, just probably put him at an F. I just don't care about Kruphix. I don't even think I'd run him in the 99. I think there's just better effects for if you want no maximum hand size nowadays. Licia was a backup commander for Edgar Markov in that precon. I built her just, to kind of focus on the life gain. The life gain direction she wanted to take you. She kind of had, you could go Voltron with her. I think I was trying to do some cute Beacon of Immortality stuff, Tree of Perdition, just things like that. If I was going to do Mardu life gains, life swap stuff, I'd probably use a different commander. I've seen some people play her and she does cool things, but I didn't really accomplish much with her. So I'd probably put her at C, just kind of in the middle. Light-Paws. So I didn't build Light-Paws. Light-Paws was a gift given to me by one of my friends during the gift exchange, or one of our yearly deck exchanges. And it was a budget list, and it wrecked the house. It wasn't even optimally built. It's just a ridiculously strong effect that is very hard to stop once you get a couple pro color enchantments on it, and it can only go up from there. So yeah, I still have this deck built. It's kind of my pull out in case of emergencies list when people want to play a higher power game. I wouldn't call it CEDH level by any means, but it isn't a friendly deck. It's aiming to Voltron people out as quick as it can. I've had some very optimal hands that let me kill the table by turn 6, turn 7, if not a little sooner. I think it's a she. It's very hard to stop once it gets going. It's glass cannon nature. If you remove Light-Paws, it's slows way down. All the pieces in there are there to support Light-Paws, so it has a very singular focus, and you're kind of tutoring for the exact same lines each game. So the replayability of it isn't my favorite. I don't see myself holding on to this deck for the long run. I really like the new, it's not Keen Eyes. I think it was in Modern Horizons 3, the one that is affinity for Auras or something. It's like another iteration of Light-Paws, except it draws you cards and makes your auras cheaper based on other auras you have. So I could see this shell very easily converting into that new legend, and it being a more fun experience and a more laid-back experience. I think it'd still be very strong, especially for a Voltron commander, but a little more easygoing and enjoyable for the rest of the table. As for Light-Paws, I mainly keep her around still just to have a higher powered deck in the bag. My current rotation isn't super higher powered. But I don't really feel good to pull her out. She might get an F tier, which feels weird to give a deck I currently have played. It's not my friend's fault by any means. It's just a really busted commander. Liliana, I thought the Origins Flipwalkers, which is what Liliana's from originally, I liked that whole cycle. Liliana and Nissa were probably my favorites. Liliana, I just built her pretty straightforward, big. I might have built her as a zombie deck, and then just more generic reanimator, mono black good stuff. And both iterations were very fun. I like she's pretty open ended. You know, she cares about when things die. Her flip side makes everyone discard. You can do discard strategy. That's an outlet for you to drop a monster in your graveyard, and you can reanimate next turn. I don't think I've ever emblemed her. I've seen a friend emblem her in one of their lists, and that's usually game ending if you can pull that off. But when you build around her, when you run some Magic Planeswalker, I don't think you should ever assume your Planeswalkers are going to emblem that game or pull off an ultimate. But her first two modes are very good. And just provides a lot of good value. Yeah, good in the 99, I think, still, and I would put her in a B. She might be a contender for if I do mono black stuff. I'll put her in A. I actually liked my time with Liliana a lot. Linvala, activate abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be. Guys, there was just a time early in Magic when I was just buying cards willy-nilly for the heck of it. I never I don't think I even play tested Linvala before I picked her up. I just thought angels were cool, and she was a angel. She wasn't super expensive when I picked her up. And I'm like, this shuts off some activated abilities of some of the creatures I was facing against usually in my playgroup at the time, and thought I'd give her a try. And I think she was in the 99 at first, and then I tried a commander deck around her, and it was miserable, as you can imagine. You don't realize how much this shuts off and just stalls the game. And I don't even think I had the decency to pack enough win cons or things to move the game along and like press my advantage. So it just it was like a very weak attempt at death and taxes, and it wasn't fun for anyone. So I would not recommend running Linvala, this iteration of Linvala, as your commander. Ludwig, I've paired him with a couple commanders before. Online I've paired him in Vile Smasher in kind of this Grixis bad choices for my opponents to make. It had weird cards like Illicit Auction and just some like weird voting decision cards that weren't supposed to benefit my opponents at all. And that kind of was the first iteration of a deck that came later that I'll get to, hopefully. That build around him wasn't super there was elements of it I liked, but that propelled me to the later iteration. And this, first just talking about Ludwig himself, I know he was he was a legendary creature people were excited to see represented on a card for the first time, and this was less than what people were expecting, to say the least. Kind of an underwhelming effect. The other version of Ludwig I've played is a paper list I built. I paired with Sidar Kondo, which I'll pull up Sidar. Another partner in this. It was this weird 4-color land animator list that ran some old enchantments that turn your lands into creatures and gives them, they're all 1/1s or 2/2s, so they're really easy to get through and hit your opponents thanks to Sidar, giving kind of a pseudo invasion. This was another deck I did not play test a ton. I just liked the idea of the engines and the weird kooky cards it could set up. I built the list, played it once, and took it apart immediately. It won. It took felt like a 20-minute turn. It was probably less, but it set up a Jeskai Ascendancy. It ran Jeskai Ascendancy. So you're just setting up these storm turns and making your creatures huge, and it was just kind of a nightmare to track. It wasn't fun for people to watch. So not to say Sidar Kondo can't run his own list or be paired with a partner and have a much more pleasant gameplay experience, but Sidar, in my iteration of him, wasn't very fun. Was a mistake to build. And I'll put Ludwig also as an F. All right, so that's about an hour, so I'm going to probably call this part good. We're coming along nicely. More A decks than... Well, maybe that sounds weird to say, but it's nice seeing some of these creatures I'd be excited to revisit. I've been kind of missing some old brews, and it's nice to see some of these still pique my interest. So, hope you guys are enjoying. I will catch you next time with more legendary creatures to review. See you guys.